Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. We're going to get rocking and rolling here. Oh, that's interesting. My captions were a little off there, but that's all right. We're going to get rocking and rolling. I have a lot to share today. I think I put too many hours into a 30-minute session, but I like this topic. I've been wanting to talk about it for a long time. I've shared that this is my all-time favorite business book, like 10 times higher than any other book that's out there. And this book is called 7 Habits for Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. The difference between that book and what I'm going to share today is that Stephen Covey is talking about us as individuals and in our personal life and holistically the habits we have that shape us. And for me, what I want to do is put a twist on those 7 habits into the federal market and government contracting. So that's what we're going to be talking about, because when I look at businesses that struggle out there or aren't having the success that they want, I don't think it's a lack of opportunity. I say this a lot. It doesn't matter whether Democrats or Republicans are in government, they all like to spend. And so there's a lot of spending that happens. If you look at the amount of contract dollars that have been spent over the years, it just steadily goes up. So there's a lot of opportunity for us. And if we're not hitting the success that we want, it generally comes from lack of habits, good habits in place, process. You hear me talk a lot about that if you've ever come to my training, but habits, right? Having the right habits in place. Success isn't about luck, right? It's about, there's this great line that a lack of planning is planning to fail. And it's the same kind of thing. If we don't put daily habits in place that are going to lead to the success that we want, then how can we ever expect that we're going to get to those goals, those success metrics that we have set for ourselves? But when we do have those daily habits in place and we work on them every single day, over time, you'd be amazed at what happens. Just think about me, right? I've been doing training for years, decades, right? But the last 4 years in particular, LinkedIn allowed me to finally go live on LinkedIn. And so I said, I'm going to go live every single day. I have done well over 800 videos in the last 3-4 years, training videos that are out there. And this is compounded. You can see it in the amount of followers I have on LinkedIn or my newsletter subscribers, the reach I have, the fact that DoD and other large entities come to me and say, hey, how can we reach industry? Well, that was exactly what I wanted. But when I got started, first off, I had bad habits. And then second, I had basically no visibility, or no one had visibility of me. And so our habits, though, when we do it, we start having compound success that will lead to those goals we want. And so I just put here that, you don't rise. None of us rise up to the goals. We don't just set goals and all of a sudden we magically go to them. All you have to do is look at the SBA. They set goals for the small business program and rarely meet them. And some of them, they never meet them, right? You fall to the level of your habits. And so if you have poor habits, you have poor results. But if you have really good habits, then you're going to start having really good results. So I want you to be paying attention to this. I want you to be thinking about the habits you have in place. And I'm going to give you these 7 that we're going to talk about today. But I want you to think about that what you do daily, these habits that you have, and what you measure gets done, right? There's this line that says what gets measured gets done. And you should be measuring around your habits and processes, et cetera. And so you want to ask yourself, are you doing enough? Hopefully, either way, I'm going to be able to help you think about doing even more. And so in today's training, I'm going to break it up into 4 different sections. First, at a holistic level, I want to talk about the power of foundational habits. There's these two foundational levels, if you will, that I paraphrase out of Stephen Covey's book. The second thing I'm going to talk about are habits, the 3 habits that make you independent, not dependent. And number 3, I'm going to break those next 3 habits. These are interdependent habits for strong relationships out there. And what this means is your ability to play well with others, right? And to have the success that you want by working well with others. And then I'll wrap up with the last habit of continuous renewal, this importance of you got to take care of yourself if you're going to take care of everything else that's out there. So that's what we're going to do. If you're excited for that, put habits rock in the chat. Don't forget to let people know that you're open to connecting. Say hi to each other. Throw in there, where you're coming from, a couple of things you do, like data strategy and healthcare IT. Is that Ingmar Holt? So I got to see that, and I'll go back and look again. Hey, if you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I am founder of Call Plan AI. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years after I got out of the Army as a small business government contractor, And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. And this is what I want for you as you go forward. When you have good habits in place, those lead to repeatable, predictable success. And I really do want that for you. That's why I come back every day to do these trainings. If you haven't followed me on LinkedIn already, come on over to LinkedIn and follow me. If you haven't subscribed to the newsletter, Government Contracting Success newsletter, I put this newsletter out as a way to constantly give you tactical guidance on how to have more success in the federal market. Okay, let's get rocking and rolling and talk about the power of foundational habits, right? This idea that we all have habits. We just have to figure out what those habits are. An example, there's a lot of good examples out there. There's a book called The Atomic Habits, but it talks about we have these triggers that can line up to it. And you begin to realize, oh, I got a lot of bad habits or good habits, things that trigger you to have like a candy bar or beer or whatever it is, things like that. You might have some good habits, like every day you get up and you make your bed. A lot of us came out of the military, we're still getting up and the first thing we do is make the bed. And so, these are foundational habits, but you don't want them to just be there. You want to choose the habits that you have. And the habits I'm going to talk about today fall into two groups. The habits that make you independent, this ability to lead yourself, right? And then habits that make you interdependent, your ability to work with other people. So these first three habits I'm going to talk about in a minute, they really help you focus on you. An example of things you want to work on is doing what you say you will do. There's a great thing. I have 11-year-old sons, and one of the things I try to teach them is that, ethics or good character, things like that are not what you do when people see. It's what you do when no one's there. And it's the same thing about doing what you say you will do. Yes, of course, you want to do what you say you will do to somebody else, but are you working on the habits that will make sure that you're doing for yourself what you said you will do? So an example is, I said I will drink more water. I should be drinking 64 to 100, I don't know if it's ounces of water, right? I literally have none right now. So it's like, am I doing what I need to do? By the way, I've been reading this book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, for 20 plus years. I constantly keep coming back and trying to refresh myself on the memory and go, man, am I just paying lip service to this independent set of habits, or am I actually doing what I need to do? And then the last thing is these habits around independence is making sure that you're working on and you're engaging in things that are priorities to you. So in the business world, right, we'll talk about this in a minute about certain priorities, but you have priorities that you have set for your company and for yourself as a professional. Are you focusing on those? The first three habits that we'll talk about that are like what I'm calling independence habits, these ones are focused on yourself. The second set are habits of interdependence and building relationships. If you've been in the government contracting world long enough, somebody has said to you that success is built on relationships. Yes, you build it on your skill and your experience, things like that. But if nobody knows who you are, then it's going to be hard to get in the door, right? And to have conversations that let people know that your company is the best at what you do. And so you need to build strong relationships. I call them strategic relationships, these relationships that are focused on mutual success. And so in these habits of interdependence, that's about working together. In the federal space, we call it competimates, right? Working with competitors. Sometimes we compete on an opportunity. Sometimes we team up together, but we're learning to work well with each other for mutual success. That's a strong relationship. That's a strategic relationship that's out there. In these habits, you begin to build communication and trust. So communication is just your ability to work well with others. I have this great line I like to use that says the biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it took place at all. And so you're developing habits around communication, not just am I communicating to them, but am I understanding what they're saying? And that's what these habits focus on the communication. And then if you've ever heard this line, people buy from those they know, like, and trust. Well, when you start working on these interdependence habits, you're starting to build that trust that will make somebody turn to you more and more because they trust you. They see you as a trusted advisor in what they're doing. I have many people like that myself. I have a friend, Tim Kelly. Anytime I need somebody's solid opinion, I know I can turn to him. We have built this relationship that I can turn to him and trust that what I get for him not only will be wise suggestions, but he's got my best interest at heart when he's suggesting it. And then the last part about these interdependence as it relates to government contracting is our ability to team for high mutual success. I always talk about a strategic relationship is one that is committed to mutual success. I'm committed to your success and you're committed to mine. And this is the interdependence that allows us to grow much, much bigger than we ever would if we were on our own. The idea of working with somebody else in interdependence is to take 1 + 1 = 2 to 1 + 1 = 3. When we come together, we can accomplish so much more than the sum of those two parts. Okay, so let me walk through these habits. I got just track my time. I got 20 minutes left and I got 7 habits and I talk a lot. So I want to kind of move through here. Habit number 1 is be proactive. And again, just if you happen to be showing up a little late, Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, is what I got when I was working in the Pentagon, and I've been living and breathing it. That book, though, is about me as an individual personally. Here, I'm trying to spin these habits into the government contracting space. So being proactive really just means taking charge of your day and the activities. It's being this ability to choose your response. So Stephen Covey likes to describe responsible means response able. You're able to choose your response. And being proactive, choosing your response, is different than reactive, reacting to whatever happens. But this ability to choose your response really gives you unique power in controlling your life. I like to use this line that says, if you take responsibility, then you can gain control. And so responsibility is not blame. If I take responsibility for how closely my family and I drive to another car as we go forward, well, I could sit there and say, my wife has responsibility, she's driving, right? And then she's in control. And if I got a complaint about that, just, shut up, you're just complaining. But if I want to control it, I can volunteer to drive at the beginning, right? And I'm just trying to use an example that's pretty straightforward. I can say, hey, how about I drive? Fine, go ahead and drive. I'll use my iPad, right? And so now I can drive and now I can control how close we are. Maybe I want to tailgate. Maybe I want to race. Maybe I want to be safely farther apart. Whatever it is, when I take responsibility, I give myself control. And that's this idea of response able. That's a proactive look at what you're doing. One of the things that is really important about being proactive rather than reactive is just not complaining. This idea, if there's a problem out there, you should be also coming with a solution, not just whining and complaining, right? And so when we talk about focusing on what you can control, let me see if I can zoom in here for a second. Stephen Covey, I got this idea from him in his book where he talks about the circle of influence and circle of concern. And so circle of influence are these things I can control. I can control this LinkedIn Live. I can control the slides and things like that. So that's my circle of influence. I can influence what's going on. I can attract more people to my lives by really listening to what you would like to hear and be trained on and giving you more of that. So that's my circle of influence. My circle of concern are all these things that are out there. A really good example is the federal budget. Right now, there's no budget. The government is shut down. That's my circle of concern. I can't do anything about it but complain. And that complaining is not going to help me move forward. And so what I do is I go back into my circle of influence and I say, you know what I can do? I can do a lot of research and preparation. So when those guys come back to work, I'm ready to start going full steam as soon as they're there, instead of just sitting back and waiting for something to happen. And so you want to think about yourself as well. What's your circle of influence and circle of concern? And stay in the circle of influence and you're being proactive. When you find yourself out there in the circle of concern, you're going to be dealing with a lot of reactiveness in your life. Okay, habit number 1, be proactive. Habit number 2 is begin with the end in mind. And this is one of my favorite ones because it defines the success that you want, right? In here, I wrote it defines the success before you act, but I wanted to use an example from software development. We call it, so in software development, you take a feature or something you're trying to build, and we put something called a definition of done on that. And the whole point of doing that is I'm beginning with the end in mind. I'm saying when this feature is done, how will I define what that actually looks like, right? And only by knowing what that will look like. So say, for example, I actually did this right now. I built a feature that goes out and does something on YouTube, blah, blah, blah. And when I got to the end, I realized, I hadn't told it I want to use this particular thumbnail. And so the more clarity I can have on what I want the final results to be, the easier it is to build whatever I'm building. And it's the same thing if you think about your business and setting goals. What's your revenue goal? What do you want your company to be like in 2 to 5 years? Are you planning on selling your company or giving it to your family type thing? And if you're going to sell it, are you thinking about the agencies that would be best in there? For example, if you go to sell your company, you really don't want to be selling a company that has, I don't know, like 10 agencies or more. I would even shorten it, right? But your best sale is if you're selling a company that is like in the Air Force and the Army. That's a really attractive company compared to if you're everywhere, because you're all thinned out is what the buyer will think. And it's the same thing about if I want my company to be this big or to explore this type of experience, et cetera, what's the agency and what are the type of contracts that will lead me to that? That's what beginning with the end in mind is as you go forward. And then you align those goals, those desired end states to the daily activity you have. So if I know that I want to build a company that is, got bigger and bigger SharePoint contracts, then my daily activity is to find more companies that are doing SharePoint related work so I can team with them, find more agencies and get in there and figure out who's owning the SharePoint part for the program office. I'm beginning with the end as I move forward on this. So habit 2, begin with the end in mind. You look at where you want to go and you come back and you start working towards that. Habit 3, and these are the independence ones, right? Put first things first. This means just doing the most important thing first. You want to prioritize importance over urgency. I don't know if you watched training I did yesterday, I think, but you can go back and watch a replay. And it's where I talk about, again, Stephen Covey, he introduced me to this whole idea of a time matrix that is in 4 quadrants. And the idea is quadrant 1 is urgent and important. Quadrant 2 is not urgent and important. And the other ones are not important. Quadrant 3 and 4. But quadrant 2 is where I want to be, right? And that's prioritizing importance and a lack of urgency into my day. I'm looking at those things because when I work on those things, they're strategic focus. When I work on quadrant 1, it's really busy, responding to the customer, et cetera. Anytime anything's urgent, you're not really living in a strategic world. So I already put here, right, is focus on quadrant 2. You can think about putting systems in place in your company. You could be looking at the relationships you have and go, am I creating enough new ones? Am I developing the relationships I have? When you put these in place and you start focusing on quadrant 2, you are building things that are going to be there for the long term. You're preparing yourself for that independence that I'll talk about in a minute. The last thing I want to just say about putting first things first, and this is something I'm guilty of, is you've got to say no to good things in order to make room for great things. And so an example for me that just came up the last couple of days is somebody asked me to go speak and be a keynote speaker, and they'll pay for me to go out to where they're at. And that's good. It's like, I get visibility. I want to get out there and do more of that. But I have to say no, because if I do that, then I'm not going to really be able to work on the great things I have in mind. Like I just started a company called Call Plan AI. I want to build that up because I think it'll help so many companies, and it'll help me as well and my own personal goals. And so you have to understand that saying no is okay because it allows you to focus on first things first, those top priorities that you have. Okay, so that was habit 3. Hey, really quick, I just want to thank Voltron for being our sponsor. They help you write more winning federal proposals with their purpose-driven AI. They'll go from solicitation to compliant, compelling drafts that you can work on. The reason I paused there for a second is because they just revamped their website today and they launched it. I'd love you to check it out at Voltron.ai. But in there, the thing I liked best is on their home screen, that right in the center is a video, and you push it, and it's not Mac, the CEO, or somebody else. It's their customers talking about it. And even me, as experienced as I am, these are more experienced proposal managers than me, and they're talking about the value they get out of Voltron. So I'd love for you to go check that out. At the very least, just throw a thank you into the chat and comments for Voltron to be sponsoring us. Okay, habit number 4, think win-win. This is where we start going into interdependence, where we're working with everybody else. Before I go too far, win-win, hopefully this is obvious, right? I win and you win. Imagine we're in a relationship, we're trying to work together, team together, or even a federal buyer, but you and me. So I win and you win. That's win-win relationship. You want to understand it compared to others, where I win and you lose. That's not good for me to only worry about me winning and you lose. The relationship's unbalanced. It's the same thing, maybe even worse, when I sit there and accept that I lose, you win. That's not good. First off, it's unbalanced, and anything unbalanced will spin out of control. And so that lose wins bad. And the last one, lose lose. It's better to walk away from a relationship than to stay in one where it's lose lose, where you're like, well, we'll both stay in here and it sucks. And you know, the easiest way you can find a lose lose relationship example is when somebody doesn't like where they're working, and where they're working doesn't really like them, yet they just stay. No one quits, no one fires, and they stay. That is a lose lose. Both of those people are suffering. Both of those entities or stakeholders, right, are suffering. But if they just said, you know what, there's no deal, let's just walk away, then they both could have so much a better life. So for us, we want to think win-win. We want to seek mutual benefit between me and the other person. I want you and I to both have success, not just one of us. And so I want to seek that in every conversation, every deal I have, certainly every relationship. I do not want to be in a relationship where it's transactional, right, instead of relational. Transactional is where I'm just going in and I'm basically using the relationship to get what I want and get out. That's not good. Even frankly, if it's a little bit of a win-win for both of us because it's an opportunity, what I really want is long-term relationships. Why would I want to build 100 different one-off relationships when I could have 5 very strong relationships? The last thing about win-win is you want to have an abundance mindset. I think people describe it as like zero-sum game, where they're worried about, if you get something, then I won't get it. And that's just not the reality. There's enough success out there for everybody. If you think about a pie, right? And we're like, oh, we're dividing up the pie. And if I give you a bigger slice of pie, oh, there might be a problem. Well, all you have to do for an abundance mindset is to just say, let's bake a second pie. If you ever go to Thanksgiving or something like that where they got an apple pie, that's not the end of it. They got a pumpkin pie and a pecan pie and a chocolate pie, and people can just keep bringing out more pies. You can never stop having pies. And in the federal market, we hear about maybe 23% of the federal dollars are there, and we small sometimes think we're competing for that 23%. Screw that. We're competing for the 100%. So let's go up and get 50%. We don't need laws or rules. We need to work together and go after it. Having that win-win attitude, have a habit of thinking win-win, and we're going to be able to get more for everybody instead of having to divvy up a small part. All right, so the next habit is seek first to understand and then to be understood. This, I think, is the most classic one for salespeople, right? There's this line that says you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them proportionately. And that means listen way more than you talk. And seek first to understand, then to be understood really is starting with that, right? First, I'm listening and then I'll talk. This part, when I'm talking to my mouth and my ear, and I don't know why I keep pointing to them because I think you know where they're at. When I talk about that, that's more of a, let's say a physical activity. But seeking to understand is a whole different thing than hearing, right? And so you want to listen to understand what the other person is saying compared to listening to them and in your mind kind of prepping yourself to respond. I think my biggest violation of that is with my wife, and I'm getting better at this, but where I'm listening, I'm waiting. And even if it seems like I'm really listening, maybe I'm just tactically listening for my chance to get in there and strike with really good data and evidence. You tell me I haven't taken out the trash. Well, I did last Thursday or something, right? That's not a way to build a good relationship. And when we're talking about working, having an interdependence relationship with our stakeholders or the people in our lives, then we need to seek to understand. We need to listen to them to understand. And first go, that's where you don't really care about this or this. Your bigger picture is this. When I think about that and I've taken the time to understand, then I can communicate so much better. And the way for me that I know that I'm doing a much better job listening to understand is when I don't respond as fast. Like I listen and I'm like, and then I think of how I'm going to respond. And it's a flag for me if they finish talking and I'm ready to talk. I'm like, wait a minute. Were you just sitting? Even if it's subconsciously, it's like, was I just sitting there waiting to get my point across? And with federal buyers, this is huge. You want to go in and have a conversation. We call it pulling a thread. If you want to understand how to understand more, if they talk about something, don't worry about responding so fast. Pull a thread. Try to understand what they're saying even more. Okay, people often open up more when they're feeling heard, right? And I think this goes with the next line. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. And when you're listening to them, and you're talking in a way that they can tell that you're trying to understand where they're coming from or understand in the federal government their priorities and their challenges, and you're not just trying to sell them your solution, your service or product, et cetera. When you sit there and truly listen to them, they're going to feel understood, and then they're going to feel like you care, and then they're going to start caring about what you have to say. And that's when you can start being understood. Okay, so habit 6 here is synergize. And this is a word, I always like synergy, but it's funny. It's like such a controversial word. People thought it was a little too uppity or something. The reason I don't particularly like it is because it's not really clear enough. And I like words that are clear. But all synergize means in the habit is working together, right? If we work together, we're all going to be stronger. There was this great analogy about the strength of us. And hopefully you can picture in your mind what I'm about to say. But imagine a thread. We have a thread. And I tell you to take the thread and you snap it, right? And you're like, and you snap the thread. But if I give you the thread and then there's 10 of us around and we each have a thread, we put the threads together and we weave it all together. We just kind of spin them together or braid them together, whatever. And then I tell you to break it. You can't break it. And imagine more threads and more threads. You can't break it because we're stronger together. And that's something about synergy here is that when we work together, we're going to be stronger, so much stronger and more successful in government contracting than we ever will be alone. I hear people talk about, no, I want to get it all myself and I want to prime contracting and do all the work myself. It's like, no, you should give away 49% every time. This is my personal opinion, because then you will build out relationships and teams with people who are going after a $100 million contract and come over to you, or $1 billion contract, right? You can grow so much bigger together. The other thing about synergy, and when you think about large and small businesses out there, if you're going after an opportunity, but that opportunity is bigger than you can do, they can come in and fill the gaps for you. And they can make your team, when you go into the federal buyer, so much stronger, similar to the threads woven together. The last thing is when you combine your strengths, similar to what I said a minute ago, you start winning bigger and bigger contracts and you start winning them faster. This is a huge thing. And the growth within the federal market, larges know this, and we smalls need to really understand this, is that when we come together, we can grow so much larger. If we think billion-dollar firms are not working with each other or not working with smalls as sub or prime, then we're missing it. They are. They understand the value of synergy. So that was habit 6. All right, habit 7 is sharpen the saw. So we're talking about independence and interdependence, but you can't just forget about the fact that you are you, and you need to take care of yourself. I put this image down. I don't know if you can see it. I'll make it a little bigger. I would have used a saw, but there wasn't enough good pictures out there for me to do it. But this is a good same thing. These guys are walking around with a cart, and it's got square wheels, and some guy's trying to give them round wheels. And they're like, no, thanks. We're too busy. And the idea behind sharpen the saw is something similar. If we're both going to go cut down a tree, and it's this huge tree, if you just start cutting and never stop, that saw is going to get dull. But if I stop every 5 minutes and sharpen my saw, just take a minute and sharpen it, then I've got a sharp saw going all the time. I'm going to beat you completely because I've taken the time to sharpen the saw. You are your saw, if that makes sense. And so you need to make sure you're taking care of yourself, obviously personal, health-wise, things like that. But also you can think about it from relationships. I put here, dig your well before you're thirsty. Think about your network as a saw. You want to always be out there networking, strengthening the relationships that you're out there doing. You're here today watching my training. That's professional development. You want to make time for various professional developments around what you're doing. Don't think what you were doing yesterday is good enough. We always want to get better, and we always can. And every day that we try to better ourselves, we're actually sharpening the saw. And the last thing about sharpening the saw is you can think about this as process improvement or continuous improvement. Look at yourself individually and look at your company and go, what's one thing we can do today or this week to improve our company? So this is called continuous process improvement. Those are examples of sharpening the saw. Okay, here's what I want you to remember from today's training, because I got 1 minute left. First off, habits shape the outcomes that you want. If you've got the right habits, you're going to have the outcomes that you want. You'll see that compound day after day. The second thing is interdependence, relationships, competimates, they win in GovCon. And so you want to develop those habits 4, 5, and 6 around interdependence, working with others. And I think the most important thing coming out of Stephen Covey's book is never forget about yourself. Stop and sharpen the saw. When you do that, you will be able to come back day after day full of energy, smiles, enjoy the sunny time. Okay, hey, if you want to check out Call Plan AI, I'd love to have you over there. It's where I'm helping people learn how to get in the door and build relationships that'll lead to increased federal sales. I'm at an early stage with it. It's live, but I'd love to have early subscribers. And if you do, I'll give you 90% off for life for being an early subscriber. All right, I'm out of time. Remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training.